There are two types of cost in the short run: fixed cost and variable costs. Fixed costs do not change with output. For example, rent. Even if there is zero output, there is rent that the firm has to pay, and it is expressed by a horizontal line on the graph. In this graph, say A, B is the fixed cost. Why it's the horizontal line? Because on the x-axis you have the quantity. If the quantity is increasing, the fixed cost is not increasing. It stays constant. That's why it is a horizontal line. Variable cost, however, changes with the output. The more the output, the more the variable cost will be. Variable cost includes labor and material. If we look at it, total cost curve is always going to be above the variable cost curve. Why? Because total cost is the sum of variable cost and fixed cost. So if we look at the formula, we can see that TC is always going to be greater than variable cost, as TC has fixed cost in it. Also, variable cost can start from 0. If there is 0 input, variable cost will be 0, but total cost will never start at 0. Total cost will always start at the point where fixed cost starts. We can see it on the graph that total cost starts at A. Why? For example, if variable cost is 0 and there is some fixed cost, then total cost is equals to fixed cost, right? So total cost always starts at the point where fixed cost starts. Fixed cost and total cost will never be 0. However, variable cost can be 0 because it depends on the output. Now let's talk about short run cost function and the shapes of the curve in the short run cost functions. We will look at average cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and average fixed cost. The most important cost curve for the firm is the average total cost curve, which shows the cost per unit of output. That's total cost divided by quantity or total output, that is cost per unit output or average cost. For most firms, the decision to increase the output will raise the total cost. Marginal cost will be positive as extra inputs are used. Firms will only be interested in increasing the output when expected revenue outweighs the extra cost of production. Now, let's have a look at the shapes of all the curves. Marginal cost curve, average total cost, average variable cost, and average fixed cost. When you draw the cost curves, the average fixed cost will start here, and average keeps declining but it never touches 0. It will approach 0 but it never touches 0. Approaches 0 when the output is abnormally high. As the output increases, all the variable costs they start increasing due to law of diminishing marginal returns. They decrease initially but they eventually start to increase and move upward on the curve. Average total cost, on the other hand, is the highest curve. Average total cost is the highest curve as it's going to be above fixed cost and above variable cost. Average variable cost is the curve that will start here and it will move closer to average total cost. Right? It will start moving closer to average total cost, but it will never meet the average total cost curve. Average variable cost will also increase as the output keeps increasing. Now comes the marginal cost. Marginal cost curve crosses the average total curve at its lowest point. So it starts here. This is marginal cost. You will always draw these curves like this. As said earlier, the most important cost is the average total cost. Therefore, the most important curve for the firm is the average total cost curve. It shows cost per unit output. As the output rises, average fixed cost will fall because total fixed cost is being spread over the increased or the large output. At the same time, average variable cost will be rising because of diminishing returns. Diminishing returns to the variable factor. Eventually, this will outweigh the effect of falling average fixed cost, causing average total cost to rise. The result is a U-shaped curve. ATC curve is U-shaped because of law of diminishing returns. What is law of diminishing returns? The other name of diminishing returns is law of variable proportions, and it's only applicable in the short run. Also, if we want to find out what will be the optimum cost and optimum output, so when we are looking at the optimum output and optimum cost, we first draw the average total cost curve, which is a U-shaped curve. This is the average total cost curve. Optimum output is where average total cost is the lowest. We know that marginal cost intersects the average total cost curve at its lowest point. This is the lowest point where the average total cost is the lowest. So this is the optimum output and this is the optimum cost. If the firm is producing at this cost and this output, then they are producing at the optimum level. Also, there is profit maximization at this point, run only at this point. For the firms who wish to maximize the profit, its chosen output will depend on the relationship between the revenue and costs. The revenue for a firm operating in perfectly competitive market is different, and the revenue for firms operating in monopolistic and oligopolistic markets are different. We can see the graph of total cost, variable cost, and marginal cost. Let's consider them to be average total cost and average variable cost. We can see when marginal cost is decreasing, total cost is increasing at a decreasing rate. When beyond Q, when marginal cost starts increasing, total cost starts increasing at an increasing rate. What is constant returns to scale? When the change in input and output is same and the ratio of change in output to the change in input is equals to 1. That is constant returns to scale. When do we experience increasing returns to scale? When change in input is less than change in output, which means small number of input provides large number of output, whereas decreasing returns to scale means when input is more and change in output is less. What should the firms do in the light of marginal analysis? They need to look at marginal revenue and marginal cost. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, then the firm is making profit. When marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, then the firm is making a loss. What is the shutting down condition? As we are talking about the short run, shutting down condition in the short run could be named as a temporary halt. That needs to happen when prices or average revenue falls below average variable cost at a profit maximization output level or at the optimum level. Continued production will incur additional variable costs but will not generate enough revenue to cover them. Therefore, it's a wise decision to temporarily put production on hold instead of continuing production.